That sounds good. All right, I won't bother you anymore. Thank you all so much.
We have you set up right over here. We're moving this away, so if anyone on the board wants to. This is where we're going to present. So
Don't be scared, y'all. We're about to try and fix the lights so we can see the projector. Yes or no?
No. No.
Yes or no?
No.
No.
No. Do the first two at the same time.
Yes or no?
No.
Outdoor, this is
Yeah, that's this one.
mood lighting, I love it.
Test. October 9th, 2024. Microphone check 2. Microphone check 3. Microphone check 4. Test. Today is October 9th, 2024.
About to start a meeting. I'm waiting for my state's attorney and my county clerk. Is Bev out there?
They're both chatting right now.
Oh, come in if she's done, as soon as she's ready.
Find the defendant guilty.
You gonna sit here, Bev, or there? Oh, there. Okay, fine. Okay, we're good. Okay, thank you.
Who has this on the board? You said who's the state's attorney?
He's up here, turn. You roll call that? From there? Okay, ready to start. Okay, I would like to start the meeting or the continuation of the public hearing. This is a continuation of the public hearing. And we're going to start with roll call. So do pledge allegiance. Okay, where's the flag? Let's do a pledge allegiance to the flag first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Beard. Blake. Harmon. Layton.
Here.
Kay. Colquitt.
Yes. Okay, being this is a public hearing, I would like for Earthrise to put their presentation first, and then after that, we'll entertain any questions from the audience. So, Earthrise, go right ahead.
Good evening. I'm hoping everyone can hear us okay. I want to thank everyone, First Floyd, the entire board, for having a continuation of the hearing tonight, and all of you for coming out. We hope that our presentation will address some of the questions and comments that you had the last time and provide good information. That's really our purpose tonight. It's not to just repeat our presentation again, but to get out in front of you with some of the questions you asked. And we've spent a lot of time since we heard some of the questions and concerns trying to address some of those. And I think you'll be pleased by some of the responses that you heard here. As only one example, one of the things we heard from a few people was that they felt that the county's ordinance at 100-foot setback was inadequate. Our project team went back to work, and we've actually increased the setback for our project by 50%. So that setback will now be 150% for all roads. One of the other questions that we have heard from a few people since last week, that's just last month, I apologize, is why are we here? Why do we need to have a public hearing? Why are you making all this come out here for this? When the county established its solar ordinance, they did so in accordance with the state statute that set out the requirements and the powers of the county to set up regulations for siting of solar projects. That state statute very specifically requires that there be a public hearing. And I want to read it because I've had some people really ask about this. The county board in the county in which the facility is to be sited, or the ZBA for the county, shall hold at least one public hearing. That's the public hearing that we started on September 10th. and that the county board chose to continue to allow more information to come in through today. And I think it's also important to note, and we'll go through that throughout the presentation, that ordinance you passed is critically important. And our presentation and our application shows that this project is in compliance with every requirement of your ordinance. As I just mentioned, it's actually exceeding some of them. On the screen is not the agenda, but it's going to be the agenda in a second for tonight. You all have at your chair, hopefully, folder that looks like this. There's a copy of that agenda in your folder. Walks through who we're going to have speak. It also has some other good information in it. There's also inside of that folder a pen and a pad of paper, which we hope you'll use to write down your questions as we go through this, so that when we are done and we open the portion for public comment and questions, we're going to have all of you, and I'll repeat as we get up there. Stand up and form a line if you need to, and use the podium over there. There's a microphone on that podium for the court reporter so that he can catch all of your words, so that the board's got a copy of it, etc. And we'd ask that when it's time for those questions, you come up there, and please feel free to bring up that pen and the piece of paper. At this point, I'd like to introduce Will Fisher, the Vice President of Development for Earthrise Energy and its subsidiary, the applicant, Northwest Solar LLC. Again, thank you.
Just a quick thing, when you do come up to the podium, please state your full name and spelling if it's an abnormal spelling. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Really appreciate your time and your interest in this project. It's really important to us that everyone has a chance to be heard and a chance to participate in this discussion. My name is Will Fisher. I'm the Vice President of Development with Earthrise Energy. Nicole and the team have brought together a lot of experts to address many of the concerns that were raised last month. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. We can make sure that everyone's voices are heard and all questions are heard. So please hold your questions until the end. And as we just said, we have the podium there, and we'll have form a line, and everyone will have a chance to ask their questions. So that's it for me. Nicole, let's get started.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Vaughn. I'm a project developer for Earthrise Energy. We'd like to begin this evening by thanking the county board for reconvening the public hearing, and also to the community. Thank you very much for sharing in a dialogue. We hope that we can continue sharing dialogue to make this project to fit into the community. We listened and reflected and revisited our site plan and our design of the project, and we hope this presentation tonight is beneficial for everyone. One more. We're here tonight to talk about Northwest Solar. Northwest Solar is a project of 150 megawatts. It's 2 miles due east of our gas peaker plant. Inside the fence line, we're looking at a little over 1,000 acres. And that's where we made our biggest change. As noted by Mark, we heard your concerns, the concerns that you raised, and we appreciate the conversation. We hope this is an ongoing conversation to make sure that we create and build the best project for this community. Earthrise Energy is a corporation for public benefit. That basically means that we like to bolster our local economies in which we operate. How we have done that in the past 3 years is through our RISE grants. Over the past 3 years, we've awarded over $100,000 to local organizations. And throughout the operation of the project, we'll continue to benefit the community. There'll be jobs, increased tax revenue, and also this project will provide revenues to our landowners through the operation of the project, adding to commercial and community support. I'm going to invite Dr. David Loomis to talk more on the tax benefits of our project.
Thank you. We want to talk a little bit about the economic impact and the property tax revenue that'll come as a result of this project. I am Professor Emeritus of Economics at Illinois State University. I retired last May, but I'm President of Strategic Economic Research, a research firm that I own and operate, and is looking at energy projects, wind, solar, transmission, natural gas plants, proposed hydrogen plants, and the like. I've been doing this for over 15 years, done well over 300 projects in an analysis and testified about those. Next slide. So let's go I'll be brief on methodology. I'm happy to talk about methodology, but we use industry standard software called InPlan. It is software that's not specific to energy projects. It would be software that would be familiar to any economic development professional that would look at the economic impacts of building any type of new building, structure, factory, hospital. In fact, Illinois State University used it to look at the economic impact of the university on the surrounding area. When we're doing economic impact analysis, we're looking at the capital expenditures, so how much is going to get invested, and then also operating expenditures, how much is going to be spent out into the future. And we take care to look at how much of those expenditures are going to be used within the local county, how much would be sourced from the state of Illinois but outside of the county, and then finally how much of that is going to be sourced from outside the state of Illinois. And so that's what we're trying to separate out into those middle buckets. Though the expenditures that get spent in the local region are going to have this multiplier effect, where if those dollars are spent locally, those businesses and individuals will have the ability to spend that money locally on other businesses locally, and it recirculates throughout the local economy. So that's why it's important to take into account how much of that is going to be spent within the county and state, and then how much is elsewhere. Next slide. There's three different impacts that we look at in an economic impact analysis. The first is the direct impacts. So these are the jobs that are going to be people that are going to be employed either directly by Earthrise Energy or their primary contractor that would do work on the project. Indirect impacts, you could think of these as supply chain impacts, so to the extent that they use local companies to source materials and services either during the construction period or ongoing, would be indirect impacts. And the fact that people have money to spend on ordinary household purchases is going to boost the local economy from things like grocery stores, retail shops, dining out, et cetera. And so those are in that induced categories. And so we combine those three different impacts to get the total economic impact of the project. Next slide. Okay. So when we're looking, I'll just focus really on Cumberland County. Know that there was a separate model run for the state of Illinois, but we'll look at those county impacts. We're looking at direct impacts of 25 jobs created or supported through this project. We, in most cases, we try and be very conservative on how much is going to be spent. If we don't know for sure, we try and estimate on the low side. In this case, it's zero in terms of indirect impacts because we're not sure who's going to be supplying much of those goods and services, and then 6 on the induced impacts, for a total of 31 jobs during construction. During operations, you see 4 on-site direct impacts. Those would be solar technicians that would be doing repair and maintenance on the solar facility. An additional 6.9, almost 7 for indirect impacts. Those would be goods and services that Earthrise would be procuring during the whole life of the project. So those ones during operations are annual impacts or permanent impacts as opposed to the one-time only during construction. For a total of 14.1 jobs. And these are on a full-time equivalent basis. That's why we have decimal points. So it could be, that would assume that one job is counted as 2,080 hours work per week. So it could be that you have 2 half-time people that make up one full-time equivalent. In terms of the exact jobs, I don't think we presented this last month, but there was a desire to look at some of the detail of that. Not surprisingly, you look at construction trades workers in terms of occupation, other installer maintenance and repair as occupation, supervisors of construction, supervisors of installation, business operations specialists, and so forth down the line. And we didn't include every occupation that was here, but tried to summarize those major categories. Next slide. Here it is just in graphical form in breaking out the direct, indirect, and induced. Next slide. Earnings go along with that. Earnings, the bottom line here is that direct jobs that are produced by the project are good paying jobs. These tend to be paid at prevailing wage for the direct jobs. In indirect jobs, you see that we didn't even have, we had 0, so very low number there. Induced jobs tend to be retail jobs. So as I said, grocery stores, dining out, and so forth. They tend to be lower wage jobs than in the direct and indirect categories. Next slide. And next. We look at economic output. Economic output is a measure like gross domestic product is for the total U.S. It's the value of goods and services in the local economy. In this case, we're looking at how much is going to be added to GDP in Cumberland County and during construction, and then during the ongoing operations. So you see it's rather significant on the operations time period, and again, those are annual or permanent impacts. Next slide. And next. So next I'll talk about property taxes, property tax analysis. Next slide. I won't go through all of these, but basically there is a law for the state of Illinois that governs how these solar projects are assessed. It's based on the per megawatt of the project. So there's a valuation that was made and put into statute, but knowing that solar is a dynamic market, they also put in a trending factor to account for inflation from the time that the law was passed out into the future, and that actually continues even when the project is built. It's not a set valuation, but it continues to go up according to the consumer price index. The numbers that I'm going to show you here are for 40 years. I think there was a request at the last meeting to look at a 50-year. And I had a pie chart that we sent along to the county. I was not able to include that in this presentation, but that is available if you want to look at it on a 50-year basis. These numbers, however, are just on the 40-year basis that we did. You can see here the projected start date for the tax year 2026 starts out at $811,000 annually. That's in total for all the taxing districts here. And then it goes down. Why does it go down on a year-by-year basis? It's because there's two factors built into the legislation. I mentioned the inflation where the valuation goes up, but Earthrise is permitted to take depreciation or decline in the value of the project at a rate of 4% per year. So they, if inflation is less than 4% a year, the value of the project is going to go down, and there you bounce it against the tax rates, and so you collect less property tax revenue. So that's why I like to detail it out on a year-by-year basis, because the first year, if you only looked at the first year, you'd get a false impression that it was higher than it otherwise would be. But in the legislation, they can't depreciate the project to zero. So you get 4% a year, but they said the minimum value of the project, or another way to think of this, is the maximum depreciation that they can take is 70% of the project value. So the project never goes below that 30% of the original value. And then actually, once they've fully depreciated it, it will start to go up because it still gets that inflation factor. And we tried to take a very conservative look at what future inflation would be, but in order to project these out, we had to assume something in terms of what the consumer price index would be. You see in these slides here that it bottoms out in the year 2044. That's when depreciation has fully been taken out. And you see the tax revenue starts to rise in 2045. And that's because of inflation, and they can no longer take that 4% depreciation rule. And then that increases all the way to our assumed 40-year time horizon, and it's back up almost to $600,000 in tax revenue. Over the total 40 years, it's $21.8 million or $545,000 as an annual average over the expected 40-year life of the project. Next slide. We break it out into all the taxing districts. So that is total tax revenue. The county gets a slice, the townships get a slice, the community college gets a slice, library, park district. This is all done based on the geographic territory of those parcels where the project will be located, what taxing districts correspond to that. Those parcels on a percentage basis on the megawatt capacity. Next slide. Here's just a continuation, road and bridge districts, fire districts, extension gets some money as well. Next slide. The biggest taxing district is always the school district in Illinois. Typically they get well in excess, somewhere between 50 and 60% of the local property taxes go to local school. The split here between the different school districts is based on the percentage of the project that those parcels that are set in, and the relative tax rate or levy rate that each of the school districts impose. So those can be divergent. Next slide. So in summary, we're looking at 31 local jobs during construction, 14.1 long-term jobs during the life of the project, or think of those as permanent jobs during that life of the project. 12.6 million in total tax revenue going to the schools, 2.5 going to the county, and $21.8 million over the life of the project. Again, assuming that 40-year life. Very good. Well, I will introduce Erin Bowden. She is with Cone Resnick and is going to talk about property values.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. One of the biggest questions that is raised regarding a new solar project is whether or not being next to a solar project will impact property values. Next slide, please. My name is Erin Bowen. I am an independent consultant. I am a director with Cone Resnick. I am a real estate property appraiser. I have an MAI designation, the highest designation in my field. At Cone Resnick, we specialize in impact study analysis, ranging from a variety of property types to study and quantify if there is an impact. And we've looked at landfills, cell towers, transmission lines, big box retail. And over the last 7 years, we have focused on the potential impact that solar facilities have made on adjacent property values. Next slide, please. To study whether or not solar has an impact on property values, we look at this threefold. The first of which is to review published academic literature, see what other professionals out there have said. Second approach is for us at Cone Resnick to perform our own independent research. And finally, the third step is to conduct market participant research. Next slide, please. So the academic studies that exist out there, there are a handful. Next slide, please. There are a handful of studies, including the University of Rhode Island, Berkeley National Lab, and I'd like to focus a little bit on the first box here. The Loyola University of Chicago just released a study last week in which they focused on analyzing utility scale solar in the Midwest. So they looked at 70 utility scale solar projects that are operational currently and have been between the years of, I believe, 2009 and 2022. They looked at over 20,000 homes that were in the proximity of the solar facilities, and they actually found a slight positive increase to property values, ranging from about 0.5% to 2%. So not a lot, but they did find that there was a positive impact. And the authors of that study correlated that in a positive impact to the utility scale solar generates new tax revenue, which are often used to support local school and other public services, which Dr. Loomis just went over. The additional tax revenue to the school systems increases the performance of the schools and thereby can potentially drive higher property values. These results are echoed by the University of Rhode Island, which found that there was no negative impact to homes in rural locations, and the University of Georgia Institute of Technology, which found no direct negative or positive spillover to nearby agricultural land values. Next slide, please. I'd like to go over our independent research that we've done at Cone Resnick and the manner of paired sales analyses. Next slide. So the academic literature looks at this issue from a very macro approach. It looks at it from kind of like a bird's eye view, where they're looking at homes that are within maybe a quarter mile, half a mile, up to a mile away. Whereas at Cone Resnick, we want to see, is there an impact to the homes that are directly surrounding the solar project? Understanding that if there would be an impact, you would see it the homes that are sharing a property line with a solar project. So to do our research, we study existing solar farms and we survey every single home that surrounds the project and identify if there's been any homes that have sold after the completion of the solar farm. If there has, that's considered a test sale. And then we want to compare that test sale to a control sale. So a control sale would be a similar home in construction, age, size to the test sale. So if a 1970s tract home sold, we're comparing it to other 1970s tract homes. If a farmstead property on 10 acres sells, we're comparing it to other farmstead properties on similar size lots. We are looking at control sales in surrounding townships that don't have solar farms, and we're looking at similar timeframes, so making sure we're using the same market conditions. We're also making sure we're only looking at arm's length transactions and no distress sales. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight a couple of specific examples of studies that we've done, specifically the Grand Ridge Solar Farm in LaSalle County here in Illinois. This 20 megawatt project was completed in 2012. On the map, you can see a blue pin to the northwest of the solar project. That home sold 4 years after the completion of the solar project in 2016 for $186,000, or approximately $80 a square foot. We compared that home to other similar homes not next to the Grand Ridge Solar Farm, and found that those control sales had a median price per square foot of approximately $74 a square foot, indicating that the home that sold next to the Grand Ridge Solar Farm sold for a little over 7%, showing that that home was not impacted by the presence of the solar farm. Next slide, please. I'd like to go to a much larger solar farm that we studied. The Assembly Solar Farm in Shiawassee County, Michigan, is a 239 megawatt project on 1,900 acres of land. It was completed in several phases, with the last phase operational in January of 2022. Next slide. The home, one of the homes that sold, you can see the proximity to the solar farm, solar panels. This home sold in May of 2021 for $215,000. We compared that that test sale to control sales in the larger area, not near the Assembly Solar Farm, and found that the price per square foot differential was approximately 2%, with the test sale slightly higher than the control sales, indicating that being right next to the solar panels did not decrease the property value of that home. Next slide, please. I'd also like to point out, we're not just looking at sale prices, we're looking at a lot of other factors that are occurring with solar farms. One of which is, does solar deter new development? This Dominion Indy Solar Farm in Marion County, Indiana, was constructed in 2013. You can see in the middle picture on this slide that the solar panels exist, but there is a vacant lot right next to it. And then 3 years later, in 2016, after that solar farm has been operational for multiple years, a brand new home was constructed at a cost of $450,000, two-story garage, in-ground pool, and this home was within 150 feet of the solar panels, right next to the solar panels. You could see from the second story window right into the solar panels. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to go over some of the interviews that we've had with market participants. I've been talking a lot about data, and I want to make sure that all of our research doesn't get lost in the numbers, but we're actually talking to people who are directly involved with property values, including assessors. It's their job to track trends, as well as real estate agents who list and sell these properties. So we want to make sure that we're not just getting lost in the numbers, but talking to people who are in this every day. We talked to over 70 county and township assessors in Illinois and the Midwest. And they have said that there has not been any impact to property values being next to the solar farm in their district. They have not changed the way they have assessed properties. They haven't identified any trends. Also, we have spoken to real estate agents who have listed and sold properties that are directly next to solar facilities, and they have said that they did not have any issue listing or selling those properties. They didn't have a decrease in the number of interested buyers. They didn't have a longer marketing time, and a lot of agents indicated that many buyers were not concerned about the solar farm at all. Next slide, please. So the research that CohnReznick has performed across 40 existing solar facilities in Illinois and the Midwest have shown that there's no measurable and consistent difference in property values for homes next to solar facilities compared to those homes removed from the solar facility. There's been no difference in unit sale prices or total price, price per square foot, conditions of sale, overall marketability or days on market, rate of appreciation, and we also saw that solar facilities did not deter new development. Next slide, please. Not only has our research been shown over and over again, our conclusions have been corroborated by numerous county assessors who've also investigated the potential impact on property values, and it's been confirmed by numerous academic studies using large scale databases and regression analyses. That concludes my analysis, and I'd like to hand this over to Brad to talk about some environmental issues, landscaping, and some other items.
Thank you. I'll just echo the previous speakers and thank you for allowing me to come here tonight and talk to you. Wait a second. So as you can see with my bio that my HR department has put together for me, there's lots of things going on, but the high level takeaway is I'm a displaced Illinois native, grew up about 2 hours from here, just outside Peoria on 74. Got an associate's degree in Central Illinois and then moved downstate to Southern Illinois and spent about 6 years down there getting more degrees than my dad would have liked me to get. But I'm here as the environmental consultant. My company, ERM, is a global company. We do projects for oil and gas pipelines, oil and gas development, oil and gas kind of leasing in wind farms, in solar farms, and those types of things. And the reason that we get brought into projects is all of these environmental regulations are complex. They're moving, they're changing, they're often evolving. And so we get hired by clients to ensure that they can navigate those particular issues as they move through. So we go to the next slide. And so again, all of those industries I've talked about, a pipeline, a wind farm, a solar farm, your neighbor building a barn, there are environmental regulations that must be complied with. And so to comply with these things and to understand what's going on out there, you've probably seen my field crews in the orange high-vis vests or the yellow vests, either on your property, you've been notified that they're going to be on your property, or you've seen them out in the neighbor's field. They've been out a lot. And with all that data that we've collected, we now know that we do have wetlands that were identified out there. And at that point, when you've identified a wetland, you can either avoid it and have no impacts, you can minimize the amount of impacts you're going to have, or you can mitigate any impacts that you can avoid. What Earthrise has done is they said, we're just going to avoid all of those impacts. We're going to stay out of the wetlands, and we're going to leave those wetlands intact, which again is good for the environment. They were there before, good for all the animals that live in the environment, and selfishly for crazy people like me, it's good for all the things that live in those wetlands. Similar to the threatened endangered species, we went out and we did habitat surveys while we were out there. And as part of this, we did consultations with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They concluded, you all live here, there's not a lot of habitat out there. There's corn and beans, not so much habitat. So they said that they had no endangered species concerns. But what Earthrise has said, well, perhaps there are bats out there. There are some trees. So if they are there, we're going to include protective measures in case they are. So the agency said they're not there. We're going to include extra things to, if they do happen to be there and they didn't know it, that will be protective of those things. And then similarly, cultural resources, we have crews out there that are looking for artifacts. The benchmark is 50 years old. It could be somebody threw a tab can off the back of their tractor 50 years ago. And we look at it and, nope, yep, it's a tab can. And then we move on. Sometimes it's arrowheads, it's other things, at which point we will address all of those. And the last thing on this slide is the drain tile. We did a desktop survey, and we had a subcontractor that contacted landowners to try to identify existing drain tiles that could be affected out there. And then we'll talk a little bit later on about the agricultural impact mitigation agreement down here and how we would deal with any impacts to those drain tiles. Go to the next slide. So one thing that was not talked about at the last meeting was this pollinator-friendly solar site act. It's in the Illinois compiled statutes at this reference. And one thing that anyone has to do, any solar developer has to do is this top bullet here. We need to provide vegetation. We can't just take all the vegetation off the property and put in solar panels and leave dirt, because we all know where the dirt's going to go. It's going to go off the property. So everyone has to plant vegetation. And again, it's reducing runoff and erosion at the site. And then also the state of Illinois, like every other state, has a list of plants that are considered noxious or invasive that you don't want in your fields, we don't want leaving our site. So we will be avoiding those, and everybody has to do that. But in addition, Earthrise has decided to pursue the pollinator-friendly solar site status, which in preparation of doing that, we've developed a vegetation management plan of all the vegetation that we will be installing, and that has very detailed methodologies for how we're going to install things, how we're going to seed things, what we're going to seed, when we're going to seed it, and as well as short-term and long-term maintenance of that vegetation. And then we will, every 5 years, fill out the scorecard and make sure the vegetation that was planted that we're using as pollinator-friendly solar site is maintained and is still viable and still meets that requirement for the life of the project. Some other things that we did, the sound study was required by the county. So what we did is we looked at all the components that are going to make up the project, and those components that could generate noise. That was then modeled to see if we were exceeding the thresholds for sounds. And what we found was sounds will be very low at any residential location in the vicinity of the project, very similar to normal sounds you would hear in a rural agriculture area. There's going to be tractors driving by, traffic, things like that. And then at night, it would be effectively inaudible. One thing that was not required, but we also conducted a glare study, again, using computer modeling and looking at the type of surfaces and coatings on the panels themselves. We made sure that there's not going to be glare, and obviously one of the biggest issues and receptors for glare would be airports, helicopters, things like that. There's no issues there. And in some places where there could potentially be some glare, we developed this vegetation management plan to kind of alleviate and mitigate those impacts. So this is the cover sheet of our landscape plan. We're working on it. It's been revised. Last time we talked, it's changed quite a bit. There's a lot more vegetation that we're proposing. I understand this is hard to see, and we tried to use the clouding on this picture so that you can see the green and the pink. So the green on 700 North, it will be evergreen only. And then there's several areas in pink where we will plant evergreens and red buds. And outside in the hallway, if you go out there and look, there's the same map on poster boards. You can get at it and see it better. This particular slide is in your packet. And then also there's an unclouded one that will show you kind of the road. So if you have a property or you're an impacted or adjacent landowner, you can figure out where some of the screening and vegetation will go relative to your property. And so similar to the sound studies and glare studies, we use computer modeling. We have selected species, and based on average growth rates This is a visual representation of what that vegetation screening could look like. This first picture is year 5, and that second picture there is year 10. This is the evergreen only, and then this is the evergreen red bud. Again, top picture being year 5, year 10. Obviously, it's a computer-generated model. It's not going to look like this, but it's kind of get an idea of what this vegetative screening could look like. And the final slide that I'm talking about is the agricultural impact mitigation agreement. We discussed it earlier relative to drain tiles. And essentially, this agreement ensures protection for landowners during construction and provides financial assurances during the decommissioning phase at the end of the useful life of the project that the land is returned back to its pre-project condition. So I've gone through a lot of things here very quickly. All of the slides that you saw are in your packet. If you have any questions, my first run through of my presentation was 4 hours, so I have a lot more to say. So if you want to come find me, come talk to me, ask questions, one-on-one. And then I'm going to turn this over to Joseph Horn, who's going to talk about some engineering.
So, correction, you do not have those slides in your packets. I don't want you to go looking for them and wonder where they are. But we can make sure you have access to all of them.
Thank you, Bradley. My name is Joseph Horn. I'm the engineering manager with Earthrise. I have a degree in civil engineering from Purdue University and have worked in renewables, both on the construction and now the owner-developer side my entire career. We'll start off by discussing some of the main components that are used in a solar farm, beginning with the modules or solar panels. This project will utilize crystalline silicon bifacial panels. What the bifacial means is that these panels absorb sunlight not just directly from the front, but also light that reflects off the ground from behind. This increases their efficiency by about 10%. These modules utilize crystalline silicon as their PV wafers. Now, at the previous meeting, several concerns were brought up over toxic materials in the panels that leaching into the soils. This was an issue with older panels that utilize cadmium telluride as their PV cells, which are toxic elements. However, Earthrise has not and will not use those panels. This project, as I said, will be using crystalline silicon. The main materials in the panels are aluminum, glass, and the silicon. These are all solid and non-toxic materials. So again, there's no leaching in the soil from them. They're covered with an anti-glare coating and built to withstand weather events such as wind and hail. Next slide. The solar panels are mounted on the site tracker. The tracker is what holds and rotates the panels towards the sun throughout the day, which greatly increases the site's efficiency. The tracker is held in the ground with pile foundations. This is just vertical I-beams driven directly in the soil. They do not use cement or concrete as their foundation. Both the tracker and the piles are made almost entirely of steel with small amounts of zinc added for corrosion resistance. These are also non-toxic materials. And finally, we have the site inverters. These are what convert the direct current generated by the panels into the alternating current that goes to the substation and then the grid. There will be about 40 inverters across the project site. They're mounted on pile foundations similar to the tracker, and they're all placed at least 150 feet inside the site perimeter. This slide goes over the construction phasing for the project, beginning with the land preparation and civil work. Then we'll move to the foundation piles and their installation, then the racking and modules being mounted on top of that, followed by the electrical installation, the cables, the inverters, the substation, and then ending with commissioning, which is the initial startup and testing of the site to verify that it's functioning as intended. Throughout the construction process, Earthrise will be sharing monthly newsletters, going over the progress with the community and explaining what's to come. One last construction topic I want to cover is stormwater management during construction. This is something that was brought up at the previous hearing several times. So to start, Earthrise's general philosophy is to not alter the drainage of the existing terrain. As Brad mentioned, we had drain tile studies done. We've also had hydrology done. We want to understand how the parcels in our project are draining and how they're interacting with neighboring parcels. And the high points are going to remain relative high points. The low points are going to remain relative low points. We're not going to go in and all of a sudden shift the entire direction that a parcel is draining in. However, there will be areas that we do disturb with road construction or grading, and there are concerns, about what happens with that topsoil, which is a good question. During that process, Earthrise will utilize several technologies to control topsoil erosion and drainage. Around disturbed areas, we'll put in silt fence to contain the disturbed dirt. In areas that have high amounts of water during storms, we may put in temporary sediment basins to catch the water. In areas of concentrated flow, we'll install straw wattles and filter sock to slow down the flow of that water and prevent scour. And then finally, maintaining robust vegetation coverage during and after construction is key, as plant roots are one of the best things at keeping the soil in place. After we finish construction, we enter the operation and maintenance phase of the project. This project will be operated from our existing Shelby County Energy Center just across the border in Shelby County. There we have existing manpower and infrastructure to monitor the site. The site will be monitored and controlled using a SCADA system. That's essentially the computer that monitors and analyzes the site's productivity. It's able to highlight any anomalies or errors, and then at those areas, field crews can go out and investigate. The site SCADA system is also integrated with local weather stations for something called stow mode. This is a newer technology that basically, in the event of strong winds or hail being detected by those weather stations, the SCADA system can automatically rotate the rows of panels to deflect that incoming hail or wind. This greatly decreases any damage from weather events and makes the site much more resilient as a whole. Then finally, when we get to the end of the project's lifespan, we go to the decommissioning phase. Got one more slide. So, as was mentioned already, the site's decommissioning is governed by the AMA, which provides stipulations and steps for how and what is decommissioned. So, one thing I just want to note is that solar farms are mainly made up of steel, aluminum, copper, and glass. These are all very recyclable materials. There already is markets that exist for the recycling of them. So, the notion that this project would just sit idle at the end of its lifespan, that's not really going to happen. There's too much money sitting there to be reused or recycled for that to happen. And the market for solar panels, just as solar panels, being recycled whole or reused whole, is significantly growing. Even at the end of the project's lifespan, the solar panels will still be productive. We also have to restore the land at the end of the project's lifespan. So topsoil will be added to any low areas, and compacted soil will be decompacted to allow easier reestablishment of vegetation. And then finally, this all does cost money. It's a county requirement that we post a bond at the start of the project to ensure that we have the money to decommission the project when it reaches the end of the lifespan. And given that that's over a long period of time, that is updated regularly. I believe every 5 years, we have to redo the cost analysis for that decommissioning plan to ensure that the money captured in that bond is adequate, reflecting the existing labor markets and recycling markets at that time. Thank you all for your time here. At the end of our presentation, I'm happy to take questions. For now, I will pass it off to Sebastiano, who will discuss the grid.
Thank you. My name is Sebastiano Yarinella. I'm a researcher at the University of Illinois. I do not form part of the development team. My research center, what it does is it performs research and independent assessment of projects such as this one to evaluate the impact over the economy, over the environment, and over the health. We also analyze the interconnectedness of the energy sector with the water supply and with resiliency. What we have found in our studies validates most of the previous speakers' points related to the project having positive impacts over the economy by increasing economic output, by creating jobs, and also adding a tax revenue to the local community. It also validates that through a proper design that takes into account the vegetation, you do not have, you avoid much of the concerns related to potential impacts on the environment, soil water quality, and you can also enhance the ecosystem by adding local pollinator-friendly species that can have a positive impact on the environment. Aside from that, there's another potential benefit that relates to 2 points that are associated with the grid. One has to do with grid resiliency, and the other one has to do with cost of electricity. So how the grid is structured, you have 4 types of participants in an electrical market. On the one end, you have the generators who produce the electricity that goes into the grid. On the opposite end, you have the customers, such as yourselves, who use electricity at your home or your business. In between, there's the utilities who have the role of ensuring that you can get access to that electricity, and they also measure how much you consume and send you an invoice for it. And then there's a market operator. What they do is that they operate the grid and ensure that everything balances out, that the generators are providing enough electricity to supply all the customers and that everyone gets paid. So how the grid is structured, usually you will see that towards large customer centers, such as the big cities, there's going to be a higher concentration of infrastructure, such as more power generators, large coal, nuclear, or natural gas plants, and many power lines supplying electricity to those customers. And the farther away you move from those demand centers, the smaller towns, you will see that there is less infrastructure available to supply electricity because of their lower population. So if there's any upset in the system, if there's any failure, typically there's less availability of measures that can provide electricity to the smaller towns. So having those additional generators closer to home improves the grid reliability because it provides another measure to deal in case of any upset. In terms of electricity costs, also we see that having more suppliers creates more competition to the market, and this has a tendency to improve on the price. So more suppliers means that the market and utilities have more options to purchase electricity, and they typically choose the lowest cost. Also, in here in Illinois, there is the Community Choice Aggregator Program, which allows communities to negotiate on behalf of a large group of customers within the community to negotiate lower rates. So again, adding more suppliers with lower cost electricity improves on the whole chance of getting lower energy costs. As an example of how this works together, another benefit of adding a difference of electricity is that you can also balance out the risk of any other source of energy failing. And the example that we're going to use is in a few years ago, in President's Day weekend 2021, there was this unusual cold front in Texas that knocked out much of the power there and also stopped gas flowing to much of the country. What happened at that is that there was a huge price spike in gas, which made electricity more expensive for everyone. In the university, we have a gas plant, and in those 3 days, we spend more on gas than we typically do in a year. But fortunately, we also had 2 solar farms connected to a university grid, and we have some contracts with wind, so that prevented the impact of it from being much worse. So, again, so this is part of our studies, and we have several data from different projects that can demonstrate the benefits, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have afterwards. So I will then again pass to Mark for some closing remarks, and he will lead us to the questions and answers.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you. I know it's a lot of information. We appreciate the time and your efforts here. just a couple of quick things for some housekeeping here. One, Joe Horn's testimony, we just want to make a quick correction that in addition to the security provided as a bond, we are also providing other security that's part as a letter of credit. So you have both of those as required. And with the permission of Bev, your county clerk, because some of the people who testified today were not in the prior hearing, I'm going to ask all of the people who testified already or who may be answering questions from our team to please stand up, raise your right hand. Bev gave me permission to do this. We'll see how badly I screw it up. Please raise your right hand. You guys should be up. Thank you. And please, do you swear that to the best of your knowledge, the testimony you provided in this public hearing and will provide is true and correct? Thank you. How did I do that? There you go. Good. Just want to close up with a quick summary, and then we'll get to any questions or comments you have on two issues. One is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things that happened in this county is that your county spent the time and effort to establish the Cumberland County Solar Energy Ordinance, which you adopted to provide guidelines for how this use should be located, designed, and operated to ensure that it's beneficial to this community. We think it's critical to note that this project not only is in compliance with that code, but actually exceeds even your own requirements. But you should also take some comfort in the fact that the county ordinance is not the only code that governs this use and to protect and to ensure that it's beneficial to this community. That includes the state of Illinois state statutes and their county zoning ordinance, the requirements for commercial solar energy facilities, the requirements you heard of tonight from the Illinois Department of Agriculture, adopted pursuant to the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. And as you heard from Bad Stefan and from others, the numerous and truly numerous applicable state and federal regulatory standards that we are required to follow, and also critically important, the National Electric Code. All of those are designed to ensure that this project is beneficial to this community and to the state. Just want to go quick summary over the benefits, and I can turn over to questions. As you heard from Dr. Loomis, literally tens of millions of dollars in economic benefits from this project to the workers, the communities, property owners, and beyond. And that money, much of it gets reinvested in your community. Over $20 million over an anticipated 50-year life in total school district tax revenues. $3.3 million to the county that protects all of you, and over $28.6 million over 50 years in property taxes in total for all the taxing districts whose jobs are to help protect you. There are also 154 union construction jobs, 31 local jobs, 14.1 local term jobs in Cumberland County during the history of the project. What does all that bring to you? It also brings a project that increases not only domestic supply of clean renewable energy, but as you heard from our last speaker, also benefits and supports your overall electric system so that it has greater power and support. And all of this, as Aaron Bowen said, showed without any adverse impact on property values. And as important as Erin's work on that, and she is one of the noted experts in the state, is the fact that that information is backed up by numerous university studies and by the elected assessors who work for all of us. We hope our experts and project team have addressed many of your questions, but I am sure that there may be others, and that's what we'd like to turn to at this point. We're going to open up the floor to questions. As I mentioned before, there's a podium right over there, and we have a microphone for you. That podium is there in great parts that the court reporter can take down all of your notes. After your questions, our project team, including those you've already heard from, and some of the others you may see around the room who are here, we'll do our best to respond to your questions and provide that information. And as we mentioned before, we're also available afterwards should you have additional questions beyond that. At this point, I would like to ask whoever would like to ask the first question to please go on. We turn on the lights.
Absolutely.
I think that, what are you doing? Oh. Wow, you asked for it.
Right.
We're just doing one question at a time.
Check.
For the court reporter, my name is Justin Osland, spelling is Oselan.
LAND.
Right. Thank you. My first question is a really easy one, and I asked this at the last meeting. The answer was no, that there was not an Ameren representative present. Is there an Ameren representative present here tonight?
No, there's not.
There's not.
For the court reporter, my name is Keaton Ford, that is Keatinfoor. Mark, I didn't swear in, since I am part of the Q&A, should I?
No, those who are giving comments, you certainly can be, but who are giving comments, that is.
Well, first of all, my name is Keaton Ford. Like I said, I am the Director of Programs and Operations for the Land Liberty Coalition. A little bit about the Land Liberty Coalition. We are a grassroots group across 11 states. We are concerned with landowners' rights, property rights, and we support all the above approach to energy. And I've had the opportunity to speak at several meetings like this across our state. I am over all 102 counties. I've been up to Will County. I've been down to Jefferson County. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the job, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here before you guys. And I want to thank the board as well. I'm glad to be in Cumberland County. I have lots of family in the area as well as friends. I live in Sullivan up in Moultrie County, so I'm not too far from here. I'm pretty local, I'd say. I'm still a downstate boy at heart and by location. I'd like to speak to you tonight regarding what I believe are the core principles of our country, what our country was built upon, rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our farmers in particular embody these principles every day. They're the stewards of our lands, working tirelessly to provide for their families and our community. I've had the pleasure of witnessing this firsthand, as many of my family members, friends, and neighbors are farmers. My grandpa was and is still the man that wakes up every morning before dawn, goes out into the field, stays there till about lunchtime, comes back, has a quick lunch, helps me or my dad or somebody work on their car, then goes back out in the field until long after dark. And, you know, I've always appreciated that about him, and that's where I've learned so much from my grandpa. And he comes home, has his supper, goes to bed, ready to repeat everything the next day. One of my favorite quotes comes from the speech Paul Harvey gave to the FFA convention in 1978. And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. But as we look to the future, we also need to embrace opportunities that can enhance our community's prosperity without compromising our values. Renewable energy projects present such an opportunity. These projects offer significant benefits, not just for landowners, but for the county, starting with increased tax revenue for the county without raising taxes on the locals. This additional revenue comes without which means more funds for schools, infrastructure, and community services, all without putting a financial strain on the hardworking citizens of Cumberland County and other counties all across the country. Furthermore, these renewable energy projects will bring high-paying jobs to the county. These are jobs that can provide stable incomes, support families, all while contributing to the overall economic health of the community. By welcoming these projects, not only are you investing in your economy, but you're also investing in your people. There are several arguments and opinions when it comes to energy, whether it's coal, natural gas, nuclear, hydroelectric, wind, or solar. Now, the Land Liberty Coalition and myself personally, we support an all-the-above approach to energy. We want to see everyone take every opportunity they can to profit from the resources of their land. Right now, renewable energy is an option for folks to take. The bottom line is clear. Let Earthrise compete. Let our farmers continue to be guardians of their land. Let the free market operate as it's supposed to. By supporting these initiatives, we honor the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
This is a question and statements section. Statements.
John Pransky, Pransky. My wife and I recently moved to this area. We're formerly from Findlay, but her family's home been in this area for 100+ years. And we looked at it and we were talking about it tonight and said if there were 500 electric panels out this window, would we have honestly thought about buying this property? And the answer was no.
Again, Justin Osmond. Apparently he'll be up here a lot, so we're just doing one question at a time. We've got 7 questions. I encourage anybody who's here to come up and either speak your mind or ask questions. People need to be involved in this. If you have any concern, any question, whether it's directed towards Earthrise or their associates or our own county board, please come and do it. My next question is another easy one. And really, it's just clarification. You missed that you're in charge of the real estate stuff. I'm just clarifying, when you brought up the project down in the south, you mentioned that we've completed this. You're not saying that Earthrise completed that project.
I misspoke if that is what was said.
Okay.
No, I have not completed that. I'm not associated with Earthrise, and Earthrise did not.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood what you said, and that's why I was asking for clarification. So none of the projects that you listed as examples have been completed by Earthrise. That's correct.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Katie, Katie, Lindley, L-I-N-D, L-E-Y. I've lived around here all my life. You guys did a wonderful job. That was the prettiest presentation I've ever heard, ever seen in my life. You handed us out this packet. I had 5 pages of something or other here. And I kept looking through it. I was waiting to see where the rest of my information was. I assumed that we would have the rest of the pages kind of like a PowerPoint presentation that you get whenever you go to presentations like this, so that you kind of follow along, you know, and we have all the presentation as each one of those things came up, so we could be following along with what you were presenting on the screen there. Of course, all we had was these pages of whatever this stuff was, so, you know, I can kind of process better. I've got it there in front of me, and you had a wealth of information. And it was the most wonderful stuff I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, I was blown away with how wonderful this was. There was not one negative thing we presented. And it's like, why haven't we done this before? Let's start it tomorrow. And so therefore, it made me a little bit skeptical because there was not one negative thing presented in this whole thing. So it's like, I just, you know, and why didn't you, when you went to all the trouble of putting that together, why didn't you make us pages of all of this information that you had compiled? Because I think maybe everybody would have appreciated the opportunity to have, because that was a lot of information, be it good or bad, to have taken that information home with us, to have sat down with it once we got home and looked up, because that was a lot of information, to have looked at all over, because this here is like, I don't even know what all this is here. It's like pretty much nothing as far as I'm concerned, to have taken that information home with us and to have looked it all over and read it all over and processed it a little bit. But anyway, I guess you can see fit to do that. So anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on all of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. I just want to respond quickly and say that's really incredible feedback. We appreciate it. We're sort of new to presenting things like this.
Well,
so
that was just like the most wonderful thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, why doesn't you go ahead and, you know, burn more trees and make us not all that stuff too? Because I can process stuff better whenever I've got it not and following along and making some notes in a mark. No, this was this and this was that. And it's like, and it's like, I'm trying to figure out, I said, that in my paper. No, we're in there. It's like, why did you give me this? Is that
supplemental info, but the point is well made. Thank you so much. We will definitely make sure to have
information accessible to people.
Because that was just like wonderful, that was
And-
like the most wonderful thing I ever seen in my life.
And follow up, you can follow up with any single one of us, especially me, and I will get you those slides. I will get anyone the slides if they're interested, just follow up with me, or anyone who spoke, say, we'll make sure you get that information. Thank you.
I'm Troy Haney, H-O-E-N-E.
Sorry, say that again.
Troy, H-O-E-N-E.
Thank you.
I've just got like a list of questions that I was taking down in the presentation. I was the one that asked the last time about the setbacks. I know that you guys said they increased by 50% this time. I just want confirmation, I guess. You have non-participating property lines in there? And is that a line perfectly with what the state says?
Sorry.
You guys mentioned that you increased the property distance or the setback distance by 50%. It was 100 feet, you said it went up to 150 feet. But that is from any building, correct? Yes. So then do you also have in there the non-participating property line setback of at least 50 feet? That is included within your.
Yes, we do.
Okay. And then I was curious, where does the fence sit?
The fence sits 20 feet.
Please say who's speaking, please.
Joseph Horn, H-O-R-N. So the fence sits 20 feet outside the array area, so that setback is for solar equipment. So if the setback is 150 feet, the fence would be at 130 feet. Just to add though on that general topic, so we've directed the design team, and this is something that we'll maintain with able during the further design process. We're not trying to build up against non-participant residential parcels, and we also don't want to pay for more perimeter fencing than necessary. So, that initial package that you saw at the meeting last time that reflected, this is all the land, these are the parcel boundaries that we're getting approval for. When it's finally built, the fence perimeter, it will pull back to be as close as it can possibly be around the module area to avoid paying for extra fencing and avoid disturbing the builder.
So you will not have any on the property line?
Say that again?
So you will not have any fencing on non-participating property lines?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know you guys
it will be set back from
It
the.
will 100%, because I know you guys mentioned that you had changes. I just know that, Nicole, whenever you sent me the picture, it showed it was on the property line. I just want confirmation that, is the fence going to be at least off the property line or on the offset line?
It will be at least 130 feet off the property line.
That's from the structure, I guess. What is it going to be from just a standard boundary line?
If it's the 50-foot setback, then it would be 30 feet off the boundary line.
Okay. Oh, you only get one question at a time?
Okay, there's a difference.
Teresa Walke, W-O-L-K-E.
Please say that again.
Teresa Walke, W-O-L-K-E. Can we do a statement and a question? Okay. Well, I just have a statement about the research that was put up here. There was like 4 sections of research about property values. And so I looked up the research from Berkeley Labs that was March 2nd, 2023. And they mentioned some of the states, but not all the states where this test or this study was done. The states that showed a decline in property value were North Carolina and New Jersey and Maine. And they said that those houses in those states, in the rural areas that were within a 4th mile, they had a decline in property value, an average of 2.3%. In North Carolina, it was 5.8% in decline of property value. In New Jersey, it was 5.6%, and in Maine, that was 4%. So that's my statement. And then a question that I have, the question that I have, I guess, is how will this affect my energy bill? That's my question.
I know that there was directed as a statement regarding the BNL study that you discussed. And you were correct that the BNL study surveyed 6 states, 3 of which showed a slight decline and 3 of which showed no impact. The 3 states that the BNL study showed a slight decline only accounted for 30% of the overall data, and the slight decline was limited to less than 6%. The authors of that study issued a follow-up that the results of the study should not be applied to states they did not cover in that study. Illinois or any other Midwestern states were not included in that. Further, the results of the study were to solar projects that were 18 megawatts and smaller, and they cautioned the results couldn't be applied to any larger projects. I did want to highlight back to one of the other academic studies that was published just last month by Loyola that did specifically study Midwestern states, including Illinois, which found a slight positive impact. So there is apparently a little bit of variation out there on impact from a very slight negative to a very slight positive impact, with the states showing a positive impact inclusive of the state of Illinois.
While Sebastian's coming up, and I know there was a comment about there only being positive information presentation, and I know it's hard to see up on the screen, but just so you know, the comments that was just made on the parts that showed negative plus or positive are actually on the slide that's on the screen. That was one. California, Connecticut, Maine,
No, there's not North Carolina.
talks about North Carolina, New Jersey, California, Massachusetts, Connecticut.
Well,
I took it.
If anybody is talking, please use the microphone.
Well, they have, what I saw was New Jersey at 5.6%. Is that listed up there? And North Carolina, 5.8%.
The summary of it.
4%.
The summary of it and the quote from the authors that results should not be applied to larger projects or both of them. But the states are there, but not always.
Yeah, are we comparing apples with apples? Is this a very rural area? Because you can throw a lot of states out there and you can look at a lot of different areas, and we're a very rural area.
Correct. And I think, the point is I'm not hiding behind any potential negative research that exists out there. I do acknowledge that the Berkeley National Lab did find some evidence of a slight negative impact to a couple of the states that you mentioned. That ranged, I believe, like you said, from about -2 to about -6%. However, that's not the only voice out there, and that same study showed that 3 other states in the study did show a slight positive, no effect, but that other academic studies, including the University of Rhode Island study, which concluded that in rural areas specifically, they found statistically no evidence of an impact to homes being next to solar in rural areas. And they classify rural areas 850 persons per square mile or less, which is more of like a suburban location. And then that Berkeley National Lab study, which showed a slight negative impact, was only limited to a few states, whereas a different academic study that did cover specifically Illinois found that there was a slight positive impact. And then our Cohn-Resnick research has found that there is no impact whatsoever. So I want to make sure that I'm not trying to hide behind any data that's out there. And the Berkeley National Lab study that you referenced and that I referenced as well does show that there are some slight negative impacts. I think I acknowledge that, but that's not specific to the state of Illinois, and that the studies that have studied specifically the state of Illinois has shown a slight positive impact and the University of Rhode Island, which studied rural locations, has found no impact whatsoever.
So you're telling me that people want to live by solar farms when they move to the rural area if it's a positive impact? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying that the research shows that there is no impact for homes, the sale prices for homes next to solar facilities.
So it's a positive impact.
I'm saying that there is
Increases
no
property value. Okay.
Let us get to your other question.
Yeah. Sorry, Sebastiano Llorineo. So about the question on how this impacts on the electricity bill, I have not run the numbers on this specific project, but I can explain a little bit on how the electrical market works and how it's going to be reflected in the end. So what happens typically is that the market operator, in this case MISO,
Spelling, please.
MISO.
Thank you.
So what they're going to do is they're going to have some projections of what the population, industries, and other consumers are going to be within the state of Illinois and the whole region. And based on those projections, they're going to say how much energy they're going to need to procure in the future to ensure that they have sufficient energy. Also, the state has some targets to achieve on how much renewable energy is going to procure. Based on those targets and those projections, then they are going to call for bids to different power generators to see who can supply the cheapest electricity. What they do is that they typically buy the energy they need. They sign contracts in the order of lowest cost to highest cost until they meet the required demand for energy. So having more suppliers gives more advantage in these negotiations because you have more competition and that drives the cost lower. And in many of the markets that we have seen, so the markets operate in different regions, but typically solar, along with wind, they tend to be the lowest cost kilowatt hour that you would see into the system. So that's on the, let's say on the high end, which is the bulk market, if you may. The utility then secures that energy from the market, and then they have to distribute it to all the customers. And what they do is they're going to transfer to you and your invoice the cost of that electricity. So plus they're going to have their own margin that, and they're going to have their own costs that cover the maintenance of the electrical lines and all their infrastructure. So you may not see some direct benefits in cost in terms of all the maintenance costs and everything that goes into maintaining the system. And the energy cost, you may see some benefits, but that depends on the overall pool of energy that they're sourcing from at the moment and the pricing that goes at the moment. But generally, if you have more producers selling at a lower electricity into the market, you will see that on average, the cost of the kilowatt hour tends to go lower.
Did everybody get that?
No. Yeah.
We can't understand your, most of your words, we can't understand.
Well, it wasn't
Okay.
definitive, yes.
Yeah, I'll try to rephrase. So essentially, you have a bulk market where you have different suppliers that are selling at different price points. So the cheaper, the more cheaper producers that can supply, the average price goes down. So that's what.
Troy Haney. I guess I just wanted to start with a statement. I guess I felt a little bit misled then by, I would say, the presentation for home values surrounding solar fields. I guess the way I took it was that it was appreciating value. I think I'm not alone in thinking that, but after we asked the questions though, it sounds like what was represented seems to be not the case, that there is other studies out there showing the p-value of properties not changing. I guess it just seems to be a little misleading that what was said in the presentation isn't entirely what the study was said. I also I'm not picking anybody apart individually, but I also thought the fact that it was more represented towards the suburban area is what some of the study was instead of the rural area. So I guess it differs based on the definition of what rural is the way that I'm interpreting that.
Thank you for your comment. I'm sorry if I misled a little bit. The first part of your question was regarding about appreciating a value. We did do individual studies looking at before and after sales, looking at appreciation itself. I didn't necessarily go over that in my presentation, where we looked at a home that sold prior to the existence of the solar farm altogether. So the solar farm was constructed in 2014, and a home next to that project sold in 2012, well before the existence of the solar project. And then again, after the completion of the solar project, let's say in 2020, we were able to look at that total appreciation of, the difference between 2012 and 2020, with the solar being introduced in the middle of that, and then compare that rate of appreciation to the FHFA home price index for the zip code, and see what the zip code appreciation is for that exact same time period. And we show that there has not been any decrease in appreciation whatsoever. I do want to acknowledge that there are a couple of academic studies that have looked at this issue, including Berkeley National Lab, University of Rhode Island, University of Texas at Austin, Loyola, University of Chicago. All of these studies have looked at this issue, and they approach it from different angles, looking at different states. Some are surveys, some are large-scale analyses, and the results are largely showed no impact. The Berkeley National Lab is one study that has shown a slight negative impact to property values that is limited to only 30% of the data. However, I want to caution that the authors of the study themselves said that they don't recommend that the results of the study be applied to larger scale projects greater than 18 megawatts or to states that they did not include in their study. They only included those 6 states that we referenced. Also, I don't think we have any evidence from any of these studies that show that there is a impact to properties that are in a rural area. I want to make sure that that's clear. Cumberland has specifically looked at solar in rural locations and have not found any impact. And we have talked to county assessors who have solar in their jurisdiction in rural locations and not have found any impact. I want to present that this is a complicated issue, that there is a lot of data and research out there. We're trying to look at it from as many avenues and angles as possible to make sure that we're not just focusing on one singular state, one singular siting of a project, or one singular outlook. Overwhelmingly, I feel like the data has been shown that there is no impact. I think that it is an issue that Cone Resnick is continuing to study. We've looked at it for 7 years. We're constantly updating our research and what the other studies have been put out there. And thus far, we haven't shown any consistent negative impact. One other point is, and I did put it up there, was that the same authors who wrote that Berkeley National Lab study followed up with a survey. Not just looking at the large-scale databases, but sending out letters to homeowners that live next to solar facilities and ask their personal opinions about living next to solar. And they found that by a 3-to-1 margin, there was positive sentiments outweighing negative sentiments, and that a vast majority of the survey recipients didn't even know there was solar in their neighborhood, being, I think, within less than 3 miles. The Berkeley National Lab study, it does seem like a big gotcha. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. At most, they, seem a very slight negative impact to some of the states, but the authors are, hesitant to say that this should be applicable to everything, everywhere. And there's been follow-up studies by different institutions that have shown that there is not any impact to Midwestern states for utility scale solar.
I guess just to clarify, I guess on that though, would you say that you mentioned that these are all rural-based studies?
I wouldn't say every study out there is rural-based, but there has been a substantial amount of research for solar in rural communities that have shown no negative impact. But I wouldn't say that every single study is only rural-based.
I was just asking the ones that you referenced. But, and rural, by your definition then, was what exactly?
So I want to call back to the University of Rhode Island study that said in their report, I am not a representative of the University of Rhode Island, but that they found that there was statistically an insignificant impact to property values in a rural location. I think it was 0.1%, and they defined a rural location as being 850 persons per square mile or less. So the University of Rhode Island said that there was no impact, or statistically no impact, to homes in a rural location.
Would you personally recognize that as more of a suburban area though?
I would say so. I mean that anything less than 850 persons per square mile. So that was like their threshold. They said anything above 850 persons per square mile is not considered rural.
I guess I heard you earlier mention that you thought it was more reference towards the studies were more towards the suburban area.
I said that delineation sounded to me more like suburban, that 850 persons per square mile is a very generous interpretation of what rural is.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting to, but I guess on to my actual question.
Okay.
It's more about the setbacks again. I could only ask about where the fence is at. Where's the vegetation screening going to be? Is that inside the fence, outside the fence? Is it on the setback? How's that going to be?
It's immediately outside the fence.
It is outside the fence? And I guess the plan for the vegetation screening is to, based on the pictures that I saw, it looked like it was going to take 10 years before I could even have any form of a blockage. I mean, the pictures, you could clearly see the solar panels, so I guess it didn't seem like they're going to help for the first 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. I'll say my name first. Graham McFall, Director of Environmental at Earthrise. That's a great question. So,
Can you please spell your name for me?
yeah, it's just like the best cereal on earth, Golden Grams, crackers.
Your full name, please.
Grant, GRAHAM, McFall, MCF as in Frank, ALL.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And so what we're doing on another project that's not too far away is we're actually planting them at 3 feet in height. And part of the reasoning there is we want that growth. We're using about 4 or 5 different varieties. And so each one of these varieties of evergreens grows at different rates, but we're anticipating anywhere between 9 to 24 inches a year based on whatever variety is most readily available that's local, right? Like that's another, that's something that we're really working hard on, is sourcing our trees from local nurseries within the state. And so as you know, or may know, since COVID, the tree market is really, it's very volatile, right? And so sourcing that many trees, finding them locally at different heights is a challenge. However, that's the primary goal, is to plant them at 3 feet and grow at a rate of at least 9 inches a year. And so we're hoping more along that 5-year time frame. We're going to meet at least the height of the fence, which is set to be at 6 feet.
I guess I'll defer to somebody sitting in here. Would it be capable to get a 5-foot tall pine tree at this point in time?
They plant some different. Please say your name and give the microphone.
My name is Monty Walkie. I'm Walkie Nursery.
Tell me your name, please.
The project he has,
M-O-N-C-W-O-L-K-E.
WOLKE.
WOLKE.
Thank you, continue.
Depending on the variety of plant that he plants here, his project up north, green giant arborvitae will not live there very well. If you plant it here, it would be a lot faster growth and a lot bigger to cover that area, depending on what they're going to draw in. The big plant would be growing faster than some of the ones he's planting up there.
I guess, yeah, that was just my question. It just seems like it's going to take 10 years before we'll actually have a vegetation screening. I guess my question to the board is, can we at least set some sort of parameter to have it as tall as a fence? Or else what's the point of putting a screening out there if it's not going to take 10 years before we're going to have something? So that's my question to the board.
And if I could just take 1 second to maybe ask Mr. Walkie here too, part of the reasoning is to not go ahead and plant them at a higher height is correct me if I'm wrong, there's a higher die-off chance. If you plant them while they're higher, while they're bigger, at least that's what some of the other nurseries told us. I'd be curious to see what your action.
Higher die-off, but probably not a higher die-off, just more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Justin Oslo speaking. My question is probably towards the project manager or your legal representative. I would like to know, and some individuals who are not present tonight would like to know the names of anybody outside of your company who invited you here to Cumberland County, Illinois. We have state officials involved. We have Cumberland County officials involved. Why are you here? Why did you choose Cumberland County, Illinois to do this project?
Joseph Horn with Earthrise. So that's a good question. As we went over in the last meeting, Earthrise's way we develop projects is utilizing surplus interconnection. So that's tying into the existing mainly natural gas peaker plants that already have grid connections. So that is why we're here, because there is a natural gas peaker plant that we own.
You said that you own that plant?
Yes.
So nobody outside of Earthrise incentivized you, invited you?
I am not aware of any other government employees incentivizing us to come here.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ricky Dial, R-I-K-I-D-I-A-L.
R-I-K-I-D-I-A-L.
Okay, my name is Ricky Dial. I am the regional director for the Mid-America Carpenters Regional Council. Our region, we cover 41 counties in central Illinois. We represent 5,000 workers, 5,000 carpenters, union carpenters. Our regional council covers 4 states, Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, and Kansas. We represent 53,000 members. We have the ability to mobilize 53,000 union carpenters where the work is needed. The solar industry has exploded in the Midwest, especially right here in central Illinois. We just finished a project in southern Sangamon County that took just a touch over 2 years. At the peak, there was 240 union carpenters on one site, over 600 workers on one site for 2 years. We support the approval of this Northwest Solar Project in Cumberland County for several reasons. First of all, the solar arrays are a source of revenue, which we've heard everybody talk about tonight. But if you really take a look at the revenue that it brings into our first responders, our school districts, other community organizations, it's a huge positive impact financially for the communities that we live in. Second of all, clean energy projects have helped the construction industry recruit a newer, younger, diverse workforce that leads them to a family-sustaining career. This is not just a job. It's a family-sustaining career. Good paying wages, benefits, health insurance, and a pension. Third thing, the Carpenters Union, we have worked with multiple solar developers, green energy developers, Earthrise being one of them. Earthrise has a proven track record of being a true community partner with everyone that's involved in these projects. That includes utilizing solid union contractors, which we heard Earthrise talk about tonight, that have access to our local workforce. And I'd just like to finish up by saying, we've seen firsthand how this clean energy industry has positively affected our communities, our union members, and also the way that this country produces energy.
And my name is Pete Custer. That's Koester. Start out by saying I'm a local guy. I've been to a lot of the county board meetings. I do live in Shelby County. I live 3 miles west of the Keaton plant. So I'm pretty close. I grew up in Keytown, Eutopos, went to that school, moved up here. That means on my wife's family farm, just 3 miles west of the Earthrise plant. I'm pretty local. I got family that lives here in Cumberland County too. And I am here tonight too to speak in favor for the Earthrise Energy Solar Project. I am the business agent for the Carpenters in this area. I cover the 6 counties down here. We do have 12 counties that's in our local. We have nearly 965 members of Carpenters Local 243. For several years, we've been training our workforce for renewable energy. The energy production from the past has provided many skilled head of household jobs. My dad was one of those skilled traders, but times have changed. The way we're producing energy is changing. The trades are here to build the new power plant and provide skilled labor and great careers. We team with companies who have proven to be good members of our communities to get these projects through construction and on the grid. Earthrise has proven to be one of those partners. They had signed on to use the National Maintenance Agreement for this project, an inclusive agreement for multiple crafts. This means a senior, high graduate, or underemployed adult can have an opening for a trade and to start a new career. We currently have 630 apprentices in our school in Pekin, Illinois, and we have chosen solar, and some of them have chosen the solar as their career field. They're looking for these projects to provide for their families. This agreement means that having a truly local workforce. We'll be focusing on members or new members within the 30 to 40 mile radius of this project, not multiple states away. Also, I have a son that's a Neoga High School student. And I feel like the increase in the tax revenue from this project for both schools in this county cannot be overlooked. This will equate to millions of dollars in new tax revenue, not from the homeowners, over the life of this project. So I urge you to vote in favor of this project for your community, for the landowners, for the skilled men and women of the park. Thank you.
Randy, back again. I guess I'll just lead off with just one simple question. Looking at other states that have put solar in, has there ever been an instance where the state had to modify how those taxes are assessed and that they might have had to lower them? Is there any potential that the county could be affected by this in the future if the state changed their mind on how these are assessed?
So you're asking if any state has changed their assessed value?
Basically correct, if they ever lowered it to where this would affect what the county is receiving.
I don't think so. Missouri is going through a process of changing how they treat solar, And it's unclear whether that's going to raise the valuation or lower the valuation. I think there's a lot of discussion that they want to raise the assessed value of solar, of a utility scale solar project in Missouri. Each state does it differently. Illinois is very unique in the way that we have a state statute and how that goes about. Each state has different rules and regulations. I'll say that Illinois is one of the highest in terms of assessed value and property tax revenue that goes for, if you compare 150 megawatt solar in, Iowa, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri, you pay the most taxes in Illinois.
What about, I think I read an article recently about how Florida modified how solar companies are being taxed. Do you have any knowledge about that?
I am not aware of a change.
I guess I could say what I read was that basically the solar companies were having issues covering the taxes, so the state had to come in and lower those. I don't know if it affected the county level or not, but Florida is one of the first ones to come in with solar. So I'm just stating that as that could be a possibility in the future. Not saying that's guaranteed, but something for the board members to consider. But yeah, I guess I'll end with the statement. I'm also somebody that just bought a house right next to where one of these are going up. I bought it not knowing that solar panels were going on it. In hindsight, I probably would have bought it. So I guess I don't really agree with the fact that this wouldn't impact my property value. That being said, I guess we already bought it, so we're kind of stuck with it. I guess I would urge the board to, I do see that there are positives associated with this project. I'm not going to look past that. I just hope that the board can at least look at some of the finer details, look to update their ordinance to make sure that the non-participating property owners aren't being affected in the future. I have so many more questions about like drainage, other stuff like that. I think there's a lot of potential here because there's so many unknowns with these kind of projects that I don't think there's enough data to support that yet. So I would just urge not saying to shut it down, but for the board to reconsider at this moment to update their ordinance to actually put some additional thought and care into us non-participating property owners. Because I do believe anybody that owns a property, they have the right to do what they want with it. There's no stopping. I shouldn't be able to tell somebody not to do this on their property. I fully agree with that. But I do think it's the county's level to, hypothetically, if they were putting hazardous material next door, it's the county's level to manage that and to make sure that this isn't going to affect me or my family. So that's the only reason I'm asking for them to at least look into this further. I think it'd be beneficial for everybody. So.
Justin Osland speaking. I would like to ask whichever one of you would be the appropriate individual to answer this or to discuss this and go into as much detail as you possibly can. What happens when Earthrise signs an agreement? You have a landowner sign up for solar panel farm. What happens regarding the mineral rights immediately, during, and after decommission?
Nicole Vaughn. Mineral rights. We are currently working with a consultant to identify where we have mineral rights in Northwest Solar's footprint. Where we have found to date that we don't have any operating mineral rights, but we will go through a process where we will do surface use waivers.
You will do what?
Surface use waivers. And so through that process, and also through the language in our lease, we will mitigate and cure that right so that we can build up on the land.
You're saying that you will retain the mineral rights?
No, we're just signing waivers to allow us to build on the land. The landowner will.
You're waiving the mineral rights.
the landowner is allowing us to build on the land.
I guess I'm not really getting a clear answer. You're either waiving the mineral rights, you're signing a waiver that says that you're allowed to build on the land, but you have no interest in the mineral rights. Is that correct?
That's correct. Then when we say there's a waiver, what we mean is someone, in a situation where someone owns the mineral rights, typically the landowner, as many of you probably know, is not that person. It's another entity that's bought mineral rights. We're entering into a lease with the property owner, so they're able to lease us their surface level land. And then, to be honest, mineral rights contracts are written 100,000 different ways. But for those where you need a waiver in order to build on top of that mineral rights, we have to go out and get approvals for it. But no, we're not acquiring mineral rights, or to my knowledge, not acquiring mineral rights and not affecting.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Philip Sherwood, spelled just like before. I'm the, Sherwood, just like before, yes. I'm the local liaison for Earthrise here in Cumberland County, and the local engineers. I have no answers, but I can find you answers if you have questions, so I'll be happy to take any issues upwards for you. I have in my hand here a letter from Todd Butler, who is our superintendent of Cumberland Schools, and I want to read it to you. Dear County Board member, I'm writing to express my support for the Earthrise Energy Northwest Solar Project and urge the Cumberland County Board to approve the project for development. This proposed project will benefit our community and the school district. Primarily funded by local property taxes, district faces challenges due to its high percentage of low-income students and the county's overall poverty rate, which is nearly 10%. To ensure adequate access to quality education, CUSD 77 relies heavily on local community resources and support. Cumberland County now has the opportunity to stimulate economic growth by approving the Earthrise Energy Northwest Solar Project. This development would generate new commercial opportunities and help offset rising costs for public services. It would also create more than 150 good-paying union jobs and 14 full-time jobs in the county. Overall, the project represents a $327 million investment in the county and will generate nearly $29 million in taxes over the course of the next 50 years. For CUSD 77, it would mean $4.7 million in additional tax revenue to help our students. I urge the board to consider the positive economic impact of Earthrise Energy Solar Project on the school district and all the citizens of Cumberland County. Best regards, Todd Butler, Superintendent, Cumberland CUSD 77.
My name is Justin Powell, first name Justin, last name Pau. I'm a developer for another one of our projects up in Fort McLean County. That is another one of our gas peaker plants that we own. And I am reading a letter on behalf of one of our business partners, Roger Kramer, who has been assisting us with some of the local requirements. Please note that this letter has been altered slightly to protect proprietary information. To Chairman Holkenbrink, I'm writing to express my strong support for Earthrise Energy's ongoing commitment to Illinois businesses. As the owner of Rock's Flower Factory in Gibson City, I have been actively involved with Earthrise Energy on their recently approved Ford County solar project, which required the procurement of evergreen trees. To fulfill this need, I reached out to a local Cumberland County nursery. Together, we were able to meet Ford County's tree requirements. This collaboration is a prime example of how Earthrise Energy's initiatives can significantly benefit the local economy. If approved, the Northwest Solar Project will not only create local jobs and increase county tax revenue, but it will also support local businesses. As a business partner with Earthrise Energy, I appreciate their choice to work with a local vendor rather than outsourcing to an out-of-state company. Their dedication to preserving the land, promoting biodiversity,
and fostering positive community relationships gives me confidence that they will manage their projects responsibly. Thank you for considering my support for Earthrise Energy. I believe their efforts will yield lasting benefits for our community. Sincerely, Roger O'Kirk.
Teresa Wolke, W-O-L-K-E. Okay, first of all, I have a statement. I'm just noticing that with the solar farms that you have listed in your Earthrise that they're all under development. So I'm assuming that you don't have any solar farms that are currently up and running. I know you're a young business. I think you said you've been in business for about 5 years. And from what I see, Vision Ridge Partners is the investment company that you work with. Back in 2022, I believe it was, though, you did procure over $250 million from some banks, such as one in Japan, the Netherlands, there's another in Germany. So I'm just wondering if you are turning a profit yet. I mean, it sounds like you're in debt. So I'm wondering how you're going to take care of things and pay all the money off that you have right now, because you're going to be giving a lot of money to our friends and neighbors.
Hi, good evening. Will Fisher, F-I-S-C-H-E-R. So thanks for your question. We are a young company. The staff at Earthrise comes from a collective, many decades of experience developing, owning, and operating power plants. Some of us have experience on the solar side. Some of us have experience on the natural gas side. What you stated is true. We're a new company. We do own the gas plant in town and a number of the others across the state. Total just under 2 gigawatts of operating capacity. So we own and operate those gas plants. We bid them into the energy markets. We maintain the infrastructure there. We make sure that they're running. Those are all responsibilities we carry. Relating to the question on financials, we're happy to share anything that's publicly available with regards to the financials. Our chief investor is a group called Vision Ridge Partners. They invest in a number of different companies. The way that we came into this business is that we bought power plants, and that did require borrowing money to buy those power plants. So yes, the goal is to repay those loans as you would repay a loan, and that's something that we are on track to do. Any solar project like the one we're discussing tonight is a complex kind of financial creature, but unlike a house or a mortgage. There's a number of different sources of money that you use when you buy a house with your own money in your pocket, and you borrow money from the bank. You also, there's a tax component to solar as well. But in order to build these projects, they have to be shown to be profitable to the investors that are investing. So I hope that answers your question. Gives a little bit of background on how we work.
Outside of so mentioned that you don't have any of the solar projects that you're working, none of them are running yet, they're all under development.
That's correct. They're still under development.
So you really don't have any experience running them yet.
Again, like I mentioned, our collective staff have many years of experience developing, owning, and operating power plants. If you visit our website, you can see some of the backgrounds of our officers who all have experience running similar plants.
Well, I guess I'm just concerned about 30, 40, 50 years down the road when this all ends and this solar panels out for us, are you going to be there? Because I've dealt with people who have filed bankruptcy and you're left with nothing. So that's a real concern too.
Yeah.
They're going to be a problem to get rid of, and you promise that, but you also have to be present and available. And it's, if you gone bankrupt, kind of scary.
So let me say 2 things. So each of these projects is independent from Earthrise, the company. So the profitability or the development of projects is what Earthrise Energy does. The projects themselves, like Northwest Solar, is financed and kind of lives independent, its own little world, its own little company, essentially. And that company is profitable. In order to build the project, we have to ensure our lenders, our banks, that they're going to see their return for the money that we're borrowing to build the project. And believe me, they are notoriously hard to please and only think of ways that they can not make their money back. So we have to do everything possible to ensure that the project will be profitable, we'll be able to pay for the grass to be mowed, pay for replacement panels, and then finally have money available to decommission and pull apart the system at the end of its life. But that typically isn't enough, because if you, as you point out, what if there's no money left at the end of that 40 or 50 years? So that's why we post a letter of credit. A letter of credit is essentially a financial surety that the county can hold. So if those panels sit there and they're not producing electricity for more than 12 months at any time during the project's life, our job is to come back and decommission that system. But if we don't show up, we've posted money that the county can call on to do the job as well. So there is that backstop, there is that kind of, plan B or kind of rainy day scenario covered through the posting of that financial instrument.
So we posted money there. All right, okay.
No, like I said, we budget for that at the end of the system's life, and then just for an additional reassurance, we do post a letter of credit that's easily convertible to cash to decommission that system in case for some reason we don't show up to do the job. So we hope that provides some reassurance. Thanks for your question.
My name's Monty Walkie. My farm is, we're about like 5 generations, our farm nursery. From looking at the map, the solar is going to be pretty much adjacent to our water supplies. And I want to talk again about the tiling and retention of water just in case there is a toxin problem. You answered a lot of the questions on the panels being safe and stuff, but just in case it isn't safe, what kind of retentions again to keep that water from going in our water supply, which is going to be pretty much our whole water supply on the back, and we pretty much 100% rely on that water supply. And we are about probably one of the biggest employers in our county, and without the water, we are in a pretty world of hurt.
Joseph Horn, so that's a good question. Just to reiterate, the panels are not toxic. There's not a situation in which they do, all of a sudden become toxic. As far as, containing runoffs, again, we're not going to try to modify the drainage and stop water from coming off the parcels. That's a whole separate can of worms, if we do that. For the inverters, the general example, the inverters do have mineral or vegetable oil in them, which is part of the layers inside. And, that is something that could run off. And that's why the inverters have something called secondary containment. Either they are set basically in a tub, or they are, a clay liner is dug underneath them and the inverter replaces that. So in the event that there is a leak, and the inverters are not that big. We're talking hundreds of gallons of whatnot. But that's contained within the inverters, built-in inside containment. That's how we manage that risk there.
Okay. Another question, there going to be any climate problems? I know there's not a lot of data, but we have a worry of climate change that possibly, could make it rain more, or maybe where we are proportionate to the panels that maybe not make it rain. Is there any good data to relieve our minds on that?
Yep, so that's a good question. This project and the panels, they'll exist over established grass vegetation. While there is some data that suggests that putting a solar farm on a completely bare surface, think, barren desert, or on some completely plateau vegetation, that can have heating effects. If the project is on an area that does have vegetation established below it, no, there is no evidence that suggests to the weather, to the rainfall.
Okay, thanks.
Justin Oakland. My question is about your investors. At the last meeting, I asked a question about your investors, and your answer was that you are 100% privately invested. So you receive no loans, no subsidies, nothing like that. Your company is all funded by private investors. Would you and could you tell us who those investors are, if you have them listed anywhere on your website? Are they large companies? Are they individuals? Can any of you go into some detail on who's funding all of this? Because you're coming in here telling us that you're going to be giving fairly substantial amounts of money. So I would like to know where that money is coming from. And I guess it's a separate question, but it is in line with this same question. Does your company post publicly your quarterly earnings, your quarterly profits? Because when you're talking about giving our school 20 some odd $1 million, so that means you're making way more than 20 some odd $1 million over the course of this project. So is that posted publicly?
Will Fisher, Fischer. Thanks for your question. This is a great one. So we are 100% owned by a private equity company called Vision Ridge Partners. So you can check them out online. They've made a number of investments in other companies. They have a company in California that grows dates. They got Earthrise Energy that develops solar projects adjacent to its natural gas-fired power plants. So you can go on the website and there's more information there available.
So that, just to be clear, that is your only source of funding, that they are your main investor, your only investor? That
they're the one who owns us. They're our 100% owner. So there's no other private individuals or anything of that sort. The money that's used to finance projects like the one we're talking about today comes from a combination of them, from banks, and from potentially, banks and other financial institutions that are investing in the solar project itself.
Okay, and then my question after that was about your quarterly earnings, and just to follow up with kind of what she was concerned about your financial stability. Do you post that publicly?
We don't post our quarterly earnings as a private company, so unfortunately. But one other thing I'll say is, when you go and you build a house or you buy a house, the bank does a lot of diligence on you to make sure that you can pay your mortgage every month. And we go through a very similar process when we go through the process of financing one of these projects. And the financials are heavily scrutinized because these same lenders, they don't want to lose their money. So they look at the revenue the project is going to be making, they compare it to the expenses that the project is going to carry, and the other costs that might pop up over the system's life. So there's a heavy amount of diligence that happens to ensure that the project doesn't go belly up, and to ensure that the investors will make their returns.
Right, I understood that when you were answering her question. Just for a little bit more clarification on the bonds that you mentioned as part of the decommissioning, and again, your financial stability, you are purchasing these bonds in the worst case scenario event of Earthrise going under. Who is the bond issuer? Is that an out-of-country company that's issuing those bonds?
I don't know off the top of my head. I have to follow up and get back to you. But typically these are insurance companies. Typically like your investment grade insurance companies. But I can follow up with you on that.
If you could, please. Thank you.
Gary, Hatton, Hatten.
Hatten.
Yes.
Born and raised in Cumberland County, been all my adult life in Springport Township, where I live now. I'm for this project. And I know that there was another project going through south of me, not too long ago, the Green Belt Express, heard of it. And I know that there's a lot of opposition for it. It was transmission lines from Kansas to East Coast. And I was against it, everybody's against it. Because with the threat of being politically incorrect, I have Irish in me. And that was in the domain. They said you have to let us go through there. And when somebody tells me I have to do something, I usually don't want to do it. And to have a project like this shut down, it's just reversing the domain. If you're not going to let me do what I want on my property, you're telling me what I can and can't do, then that just, it just don't sit well with me. I know there's a lot of questions about the decommissioning and I started a business 4 years ago. My banker loaned me money, I started, nobody knew if it was going to be success or not. I mean, you can't see it. So the decommissioning part of it is, my opinion is if the landlord is going to take the risk, whether it'll be still going 50 years, it's the landowner's risk, it's not anybody else's risk.
Keith McClellan, MCC, LELLAN. A couple of questions. I guess I can only do one right now, but I guess it's for the board. There's a bond set for the Cumberland County Board for road construction while they're building. And then 30 years from now, when the deconstruction happens, is there something set, or is the county going to get screwed and have to pay for the roads?
Joseph Horn. So we're in discussions with the county on this right now. The answer is yes. The only ambiguity is this a bond that continues through the lifespan of the project? Is it one that's captured in the bond that we've already discussed with the decommissioning plan as a whole, or is it a separate bond that has to get issued at the end of the project life?
So there is a bond. You guys are working on setting a bond right now that when you go to deconstruct 30 or 40 years, that it's 100% paid for.
Correct.
And can I ask another question? Or do I need it? Please. These native grasses, I mean, we all know it needs sunlight and rain. So if they're planted underneath these solar panels, how are they getting sunlight? I mean, how are they going to grow? So it's not dirt washing onto our property or filling in our ponds.
Yeah, great question. Grant McCall, by the way. And so there's been a ton of research into this from different universities, including University of Illinois. They do an awesome job. Iowa State, University of Minnesota. They have whole, like their agronomy programs are looking at cash crops, agricultural crops, but then for solar farms in the last 15 years, they've put a ton of research into genetically modifying some grasses or just being really selective of bringing in, highly shade tolerant grass mixes or native mixes. There are some that are much more resilient than others, obviously, and so we do a pretty good job really good job, I would say, of engaging local seeding contractors to help us determine what the best seeds are that can be sourced locally, and determine what's going to grow best in the soil conditions, and doing soil testing to understand salinity, pHs, all that as well. And so we do engage with multiple folks to help us decide what these seed mixes are. And to Joseph's point too, when he was going through the tracker system, I mean, one good thing, not all solar farms have that, right? Well, they'll just be at a fixed tilt, which doesn't help because there's always going to be some portions that are shaded out 100% of the time. We don't have that problem. And those also contribute more to the erosion that you're talking about because you just have a single drip line that's there and it doesn't change at all, which makes conditions even worse below that. And so because we're moving, we're helping fix that problem, the erosion problem, and then also giving the seed varieties that are just under the panels, which is going to be different than the seed varieties that are in between the rows. Giving that the best chance to survive with that tilt and getting the minimum requirements of sunshade.
then you will go through like a DNR or the state, or how do you, or do you go with, Garderscape contractors or whoever it may be?
Yeah, we we engage specs, local seed firms, prairie restoration. There's a bunch of I guess seeding contractors I've worked with in the past that we engage, but we also sent our seed mixes over to the University of Illinois for their landscape architects to provide comment on. Yeah, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. It's really not, I mean, not really.
What was
We
it?
don't,
Sorry.
what do you guys do now? Like, what's under these panels that you were constructed? I mean, do you have growth? Is it growing? Is it bear dirt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can answer, not for advice, but from the dimension, and I mentioned the University of Illinois about what we're doing with the panels. As I mentioned, we have 2 solar farms. One is fixed structure, and the other one is with trackers. And how we signed that contract for those farms is that they would be research farms that we could also use to grow different species underneath them and see how they would be growing and sustaining themselves under shading. And what we have found is that, yes, you can grow pollinator-friendly species there. We're also working with other demonstration farms in other places where you actually have farming and you have berries being grown underneath the panels, and they also, like was mentioned, the keys on selecting species that are shade tolerant or tolerant to partial shade, and they could grow and they can maintain underneath the panels with no problems. And you're more than welcome to visit the farms at Urbana Champaign. So we have the 2 solar farms there, and we are actually organized tours and we like to welcome everyone to join in. And we also have information available on our website that is dedicated to this product with these agrivoltaics projects. It's called scapes.illinois.edu. That's scapes.illinois.edu. And anyone can see and download information about agrivoltaics and how to grow this species. And there's also the literature and research that goes into which species handle better under which conditions.
Thank you.
And then real quick, Mr. McCollum, what we're doing now too, I should have prefaced this. So when we do the perennial permanent seed mix, we do that after the panels or after the piles have been put into the ground. And so right now there's, we won't do any seeding ahead of construction, right? Because of the civil work and compaction and stuff, it's not gonna be really beneficial. Germination rate would just be garbage. And so anyways, we're gonna wait till after the earth work is done and then go in there and drill seed. So sequentially.
So you're able to drill in between the panels?
Yeah.
You got that, how much room do you have in between the panels to do that? At least 12 feet. 20 feet? Yeah. And how tall are they? At full tilt or flat? I guess the highest point. So when they're at full tilt, the height gets up to some areas about 8.5 feet. And then flat, they're 4.5. Yeah.
Justin Osborne. When a company that is either large or small takes on a risky project, you're investing in it, hoping for the best, but planning for the worst. You have what's called threat assessment and risk assessment. And so that tells you a point at which the project becomes unprofitable, too risky, just not worth completing. Does Earthrise have that written out? And are you willing, if the Cumberland County Board votes not to approve any of this, are you willing to abandon this project?
I can answer your question. Will Fisher. There's a myriad of risks that can impact the success of any potential development, right? There's a lot of us have been in this business for a long time, and it might be failure to secure local approval. It might be that there's some sort of problems with the land itself. We find that there's karst underneath the land, or there's a myriad of things that can always happen. So our goal as developers is to manage those risks, and that's what a lot of the presentation was today. How we sequentially go through and study the land that we're looking to develop, understand what's there to avoid impacting the different items that Brad mentioned, be they endangered species or wetlands or anything on site. I will say the majority of the challenge for new power plants being built in the country is just the ability to connect to the power grid. And that's something that Earthrise, as the owner of the natural gas-fired power plant, we've already solved for that risk. So more than 9 out of 10 developers, their projects don't move forward because they don't have access to the power grid and they aren't granted access. We already have that secured. And so that's a differentiator, in terms of what the risk profile of this project looks like. But if we don't get approval for the project, that does prevent, you can't build a project without approval. So I don't know, I can't make any commitments on this tonight, but certainly we're hoping that by being a good community partner, good stewards of the land, that we can gain the local approval that we're looking for to build the project.
So what I was leading up to with that, and I appreciate all of what you just said, that answers some of that. What I was leading up to, though, is what you talk about being a good community partner and basically trying to work with everybody, trying to appease everybody. I know you can't make everybody happy, but there has been some talk, and it may not be directly about Earthrise, or Earthrise may not be involved in this, but could possibly be involved. What I want to get down to is how hard will you push? How hard will you fight? Do you have any contingency plan to file suit against farmers for any reason at all? But I'm just going to give you one example that could be a reason for farmers that are creating dust that settles on your panels. Do you have any contingencies planned to fight those farmers, specifically through the EPA, and use the EPA's power to assist your company to move forward with this and fight any objection?
I'm not aware of any. We don't have any relationships with the EPA along those lines. I'm having a hard time imagining a situation where that. I can imagine us doing that. So I don't see that as a concern. So we build into our operations and maintenance plans periodic cleaning of the panels. That's just an assumption of how we go about business. That's part of the assumptions that underlie the finances for each of these projects that we've been talking about. But no, it's hard to see any. We're not in the business of filing lawsuits and that sort of thing. We're in the business of building and owning power plants.
Good, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Keith McClellan. Also, have you guys obtained permission to hook up the Flushing beaker plant? Is that completed, or where you guys stand on that?
Wizarding.
Joseph Horn. Yeah, that's a good question. The answer is yes. We own that plant already. We've already gone through studies with MISO to verify the feasibility of producing power through the existing interconnection.
So that's what kind of throws the red flag to us, because last month, September 8th meeting, whatever that day was, you guys said you had no affiliation. You guys are like putting that off. Am I correct there?
or no way to hook up, like you had no way of tying that together, there was no,
I misunderstood her question. I thought you were talking about, do we have permission from the grid to hook up to the grid? As far as the new question, is there a developer that will take that?
Okay, so we mentioned that we're using our existing infrastructure, we're using our existing generation interconnection with MISO and Ameren. And the question was about the right of way.
Are you able, you got this last meeting, you guys weren't confirming with us about how you
A lot of,
were gonna tie everything together.
we are. So we have 3 blocks in our project. And we need to tie that back to our generation, our power plant. And we have worked, and are working with the landowner in securing that right of way. So we have acquired, since the last meeting, quite a substantial bit of our right of way.
Through the Shelby County and Cumberland County line there.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Just another one. So I finally got to my last question, and then I have something to address directly to our board. So my question to Earthrise is about farm ground compared to putting these panels up in more of an industrial or commercial area. So you can show studies, or you can just give opinions, you can give your own company's plan. My concern is about the farm ground. Why are we taking away farm ground? I'm very conservation geared as far as being a farmer myself. So my thought would be, why wouldn't Earthrise pursue the opportunity to construct your panels over the top of large industrial buildings on their roofs? Why wouldn't you pursue opportunities to construct your panels over the top of parking lots? So that would be a win-win, where you would be creating shade, you'd be creating something useful. It would be benefiting, it would have other benefits just besides producing power. So I guess why, or have you thought about that? And part of that was answered by, I'm not sure what his name is, Joseph? Part of that was answered by him as far as proximity to the power plants that you own, but do you have other options that don't include taking up farm ground?
I'll take that, Will Fisher. Thanks for the question. It's a good one. You know, we, as was mentioned earlier, we don't have any authority to work with any given landowner or not. We can't force anyone to work with us. You know, we value and believe in landowner rights, individual landowners' rights to do what they want with their land. So that's kind of, you know, how we find ourselves, you know, with the leases and the agreements that we have today. We very much see solar development as a temporary land use, where it's more so, and I'm not an environmental expert, so maybe I'll hand this off to Graham afterwards or Brad, but we're preserving and maintaining the topsoil over the life of the solar system. We have a decommissioning plan that's in place and money behind that to make sure it happens. As Joseph explained earlier, there's no concrete foundations that are laid, with the exceptions of the pads that are poured to support those inverters. All the panels are on I-beams that can be just lifted out of the ground as easily as they were installed. Fence can be removed. So we see this as a temporary land use. It gives the land time to rest through the plants and the species that we choose for the ground cover during the life of the system. They help to kind of rebalance some of the soil during that rest period. And so when the system is, you know, has reached the end of its useful life and it's removed, that land can go back to farming. There's no permanent change to the land or the use. And we do believe that it's in a way sort of preserving farmland, versus building a number of new homes or some sort of a new shopping center or something of the like. And we take every step possible through consultation and through the agricultural impact mitigation agreement that we signed with the state to disturb drain tile, again, to minimize the impact of the hydrology of the site so that it can return to being productive farmland after the life of the solar panel or the solar system.
So I personally don't really feel that 40 years is temporary. That's quite a long time, comparatively speaking to some things. But you didn't really address my question about ideas, or do you have current projects where you are constructing these on top of buildings in industrial areas? Do you have any current projects that are like that, or is it all farm ground?
For the most part, our business model is more focused on building on the ground versus on rooftops or car parking structures or something of that sort. There are instances where the sites that we are planning to use are in industrial districts, but I would say for the most part we work more on within agricultural districts.
That answers the question. So my topic that I wanted to talk to our board directly on, first of all, I wanted to extend the greatest thank you to Ms. Howard for having Earthrise and their associates swear that what they're telling everybody here tonight is the truth. I want everybody in the room to realize how important that is, so that nothing is being withheld or trying to bubble you. The concern was mentioned earlier about, oh, they're just telling you positive, they're not telling you the negatives. We're just going to find out the negatives later on down the line when it's too late. So I think that's very important that Mrs. Howard did that. I'd like to say thank you personally. My next thing, just to address the full board, would be that I know that this gentleman right here, sir, what is your name? The liaison? Phil. So Phil is a local that has volunteered, I don't know, been hired as the person to go to. That's somebody that we here in Cumberland County can trust. Go to him to get questions answered, and that's wonderful. It's very necessary. I would encourage our county board that if you do approve this project, that you require our own project manager. They have their project manager, but you require there to be a Cumberland County resident that is a project oversight to be daily on their building site for the entirety of the project and be the person that Cumberland County people can trust. And that person can go work with their project manager and ask questions, do design changes, whatever has to happen, because in any building project, I come from a construction background before I was a farmer, there are changes during development, during construction. So I strongly encourage our board to require that and to require Earthrise to pay that person so that no tax dollars are coming out from the county's pockets to fund that. That way, we have a lot more transparency. We can have confidence in that person being from Cumberland County, having Cumberland County's best interest in mind. And they can work with Earthrise's project manager. That's all I have. Thanks a lot.
Jonathan Kay, K-O-N-A-T-H-A-N, K-A-Y-E. Thank you all for being here tonight. Everybody who's in the solar industry, would you raise your hand? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Anybody else? 15, 16? You're representing Sun Solar or Thrive or whatever. So about 18 of them. Okay, that's a lot of them. Everybody who stands to gain financially in Cumberland County from having this in their property, would you please raise your hand? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Bill, you stand here. You either work for Earthrise or you stand here. But you're making money. You're getting paid.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll talk about taxes. I mean, I'm all for taxes when it makes sense. Okay. You know, I am all about jobs, and this does create a lot of jobs. At 4D, because I've been a laborer, an iron worker, a teamster, operator, and one of my first jobs was building a nuclear power plant. So I definitely recognize how these alternative fuels are important. My concern with solar and wind is that they actually create climate change. And they don't really solve our problems, and the money is just going there and everybody's following it because the government is subsidizing it. And that's why you have your headquarters over there in Arlington, Virginia. You know, it's close to DC, and I understand that. Let's first address how solar and wind actually cause climate change rather than solve the problem. When you have the windmills up at 300 feet, that has to affect the airstream and the airflow. And there are many studies that represent those findings, and I haven't heard anything about that, but we're not really talking about it. But that's just an example of how wind and windmills are affecting climate change. Another report, or several reports that I read, is how solar panels actually create turbulence and tornadic activity, and the heat on the panels moves around, goes up, right? Hot air rises, not hot air rising in this room, and so that too affects climate change. So I mean, those are real things, and so while it looks good on paper that we are going to benefit financially from this, that's cool, because we want to fund the schools. We want more money for the community. We want to create these jobs. And I do see, and I agree with the carpenters, because they will benefit through those jobs, and the community does too. The thing about it is that money's got to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from those solar panels generated income. The thing about it is that solar costs more money than any of the other energy generating sources. It costs more than wind, it costs more than nuclear, it costs more than gas. It costs us more money, 1 to 2 times more than any of the other alternatives. So solar is not the most beneficial. So as consumers of this electricity, it is going to cost us more to for these jobs and to generate these taxes for the schools. So, I mean, these are serious problems, but they're not being addressed. The sources for the real estate from Rhode Island and Berkeley, I mean, I wish that I could believe that, but, I mean, those could very well be biased reports. We don't know who the sources are. I mean, how are we going to believe anybody from Berkeley? How are we going to believe Rhode Island? That's one of the most corrupt states after Illinois, of course. So, I mean, we don't have tangible facts that we can really stand behind and get behind and say, oh yeah, I'm sure that's right. And 40, 50 years down the road, all of us are going to be gone. Maybe a kid or two is going to be around, but most of us are going to be gone. So we are leaving this as our legacy, these unknowns, these promises. So we don't know what's going to happen. Now Gary, he got up and spoke, and I agree with him and my friend Todd. There are private property rights that they have, and they should be allowed to have solar on their ground. And I'm 100% behind that. But what I'm concerned about is how it affects Walkie Nursery, because we don't know about the leachate that's coming from it. I know you said, oh no, there's nothing running off of it. We don't know who's building these panels. We don't know the long-term effects of these panels, how they break down in sunlight, what minerals are in them, and how that gets into the soil. I know you're shaking your head, but we don't know. And you can tell me all day that, oh no, they're fine, that they're made in Taiwan or China or Singapore or Vietnam, and they just send them right out to us, and everything's okay because the engineer over there says it's okay. I don't believe you. And I don't believe the real estate gal saying that it's not going to affect the property. And for all the reports that you guys have to back this up, I'm sure that I can find reports on the other side saying horseshit. So, it's very hard for me to support this because some people benefit, and I want them to do well because I'm all about prosperity, and I'm all about our schools doing better, and I'm all about our children having better resources. But I just don't believe that they're going to get it from you guys. Not you personally, but your culture of developing these solar fields. So, you haven't convinced me. You haven't convinced me, and I wish that you could convince me. And I wish that I could support Todd and Gary. I mean, these guys are my friends, and their families will benefit dramatically, and I want them to do well. There's no Russian proverb that says, if you do well, your cow should die. That's not how I think. I think like the opposite. I want you to do well. I want you to prosper. I want your family to do well. I'd love for everybody in the room to be millionaires. That would be terrific. But this isn't going to get us to it. So I'm very concerned about these things. And you haven't overcome my concerns as a county board member. I've got no skin in the game. It's not going to hurt me. But I think it's going to hurt a lot of other people. And it's going to benefit some. So it's going to hurt some, but benefit of others. So I'm not really asking you a question, but I want you to be aware that there are other sides to this conversation that aren't being addressed because you're all paid to be here and to promote this. Most of us aren't. I'm not paid to be here to promote this or to be the other side of it. And I don't like being the other side of it. I'm always on the other side of these arguments when I'm sitting at the table with the county board, because if everybody runs to the one end of the boat's going to sink. Somebody's got to stand on the other side and keep it balanced. So, these are concerns that I have. And I don't expect you to address them, but I want to put it on the record because 40 years down the road, when you guys are all long gone, and me as well, this will be the legacy for our children and for the people in Cumberland County. And the young people, the families, the people that have been here for 4 and 5 generations, who's protecting them? Who is protecting them? We're doing this for short-term gain, and we're not considering the big picture. That's all I have.
Todd Beard, B-E-A-R-D.
T-O-D-D.
Okay, I am on the county board, and I think there were several questions that was asked, and I didn't know completely answers. The county board has set in our guidelines, that they have a bond to help cover road damage if there's road damage. The county also has requested the solar companies to hire an outside firm to do a study on the roads. And our county requested someone that we were familiar with. That way, we thought we would get a fair bid on the damage of the roads that are there now and the shape that they're in. And that gentleman sitting in the back seat here, Ben Bland. And so he'll be working with the two road commissioners that these solar panels will be in, which will be Neoga and Spring Point Township. And then after that, every 5 years, we have requested them to do a new study to make sure that the bond is at the right rate or level to cover the demo. Because, you know, what we think today and what tomorrow, 20 or 30 years from now, you know, instead of being $100,000, it could be $1 million cleanup. We don't know. So every 5 years, we've requested them to do a new study to give us a new bond at that end. But to answer some of the questions people was really concerned about is cleanup, and like I said, we are requesting them to have a bond to cover this.
John Knipple, Knueppel. Jonathan, you said about the tornadoes and causing them. I actually texted meteorologist Jacob Dickey a while back, didn't know if it was Oakdale or what. He actually said, I'd imagine to have a chance of that, they'd have to be gigantic. And what effect they did have would be pretty minimal. I'm not aware of any concrete evidence that says otherwise. So he doesn't think it'd really cause effect to the weather at all or anything. So, thank you.
My turn. Okay, this is the end of this public hearing. Everybody had a chance to speak. So, Bev made official, let's need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Bob Beard made the motion. Half our board members left. Janet Blade seconded. Roll call.
Beard? Blake? Yes. Gay? Overbreak?
Yes. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Longer than I thought. Oh, well.